As we've covered before, Senator Rick Scott of Florida just can't help himself. He's put out a new plan in order to try and win the election in the midterms, and that plan entails literally taxing poor people. The plan is so absurd and obviously such a political detriment that even Fox News is incredulous at his spin. Let's take a listen.
Recently put out an 11-point plan to rescue America, two of the big points of which are, quote, all Americans should pay some income tax to have skin in the game, even if a small amount. Currently, over half of Americans pay no income tax. It also says all federal legislation sunsets in 5 years. If a law is worth keeping, Congress can pass it again. So that would raise taxes on half of Americans and potentially sunset programs like Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. Why would you propose something like that in an election year?
Sure. Well, John, that's, of course, the Democrat talking points. It's a 11-step plan.
No, it's in the plan. It's in the plan.
Let's think about reality for a second. First off, let's talk about Medicare.
But Senator, hang on.
John.
So it's not a Democratic talking point. It's in the plan.
And also in the plan, it says we ought to every year talk about exactly how we're going to fix Medicare.
Oh, my God. It's in the plan, Senator. And he's right about that. Let's put this up there on the screen. Per an interview that Scott gave to his own Florida politics outlet, he said it's, quote, unfair that poor people don't pay income taxes, which is just, frankly, completely incredible. And what's so good about this is that even Mitch McConnell is like, dude, this is too far. We don't support this. This is not the official Republican position, even though it's the de facto Republican position.
They support it. They just are like, why are you talking about it?
Why are you talking the quiet part out loud,
Why are you giving up the game here, bro?
What are you saying? And Henry Olsen, he's a columnist who I actually respect a lot, really into working class politics and all that. But he's giving some very practical advice to the GOP. Let's put this up there from the Washington Post. House Republicans would only hurt themselves by releasing a detailed midterm agenda. And here's the thing. He's totally right. 100%, which is that a lot of Republicans do actually believe this. They do believe it's unfair that poor people don't pay any income tax, even though they pay a myriad of other taxes. And if you look at their actual percentage base of income that they pay is outrageous. Also, God, I've been meaning to cover this. Maybe I'll do some evergreen monologue, but that whole report that just came out this year that people who make less than $20,000 were 5 times more likely to be audited than billionaires and anybody else. 5 times more likely to be audited when you make less than 20 grand. So you're talking about the poorest Americans are the easiest ones to be audited because they're not reporting their, barbershop income or their service-based income. Nail tips or whatever. Yeah, okay. Go after carried interests and all that. Once you exhaust all the richest people in the world, then maybe we can talk about the guy who gets paid in cash and doesn't report his tips because he's trying to pay his rent and is struggling to pay his bills. Maybe we can have that conversation. But instead, it's completely flipped. This whole Venmo thing, they're going after people's Venmo transactions. God, it makes me infuriated to think about it.
Classic GOP
really
talking points. This is Mitt Romney, 47%. At that time, I don't know if y'all were watching Fox News, but I was actually doing a lot of Fox News hits during that era.
Yeah, what was it like? I was in college, so I didn't fully,
this was a consistent talking point about how half of America doesn't pay any taxes, and it's really the rich, they're the makers. This is the Paul Ryan.
Takers, right.
Yeah, this is the Paul Ryan era of talking about the makers and takers and Mitt Romney in those very revealing comments talking about how 47% of people are never going to care for themselves and there's no winning them and all of that stuff. They're never going to better themselves. I think that was the language that he ultimately used. That all comes from what Rick Scott is saying right here. They literally lost the presidential election in part because Mitt Romney says this cartoonishly villainous thing that is completely contemptible and also incredibly misleading because, as you point out, people who are lower income pay a lot of different taxes. Much higher percentage of their income ultimately goes to taxes than certainly the very top. This was rejected by the American people thoroughly in 2012. Trump, although he governs in exactly the same way and gives a corporate tax cut, is politically smart enough to understand this is a disaster, takes entitlements off the table. This was also a long-standing discussion in the Republican Party, George W. Bush, efforts to privatize Social Security, all of this stuff, totally rejected by the American people. And here comes Rick Scott you know what we should do? if we get power again, let's raise taxes on half the country. How about we sunset programs like Medicare and Social Security after 5 years? How about we have a conversation every year about how we're going to, quote, fix these programs?
Yes.
Well, most Americans think the only fix that needs happening to those programs is for them to be more generous, to support people more effectively. So, yeah, Mitch McConnell and the other strategists who are like, we're better off just not telling people what we actually want to do, they are 100% right. Democrats are handing the election to them. All they have to do is stay silent, and yet Rick Scott can't help himself.
He just can't help himself. And this is always the problem with these types of politicians. Rick Scott bought himself the governorship. He's worth like $100 million, has some sketchy business practices in his past, bought himself the Florida Senate seat. He's really not that talented of a politician. I mean, he visited Puerto Rico a bunch of times. Apparently that qualifies you in order to be the next senator. And look, he's basically has a hold there on the Florida political machine because of an immense amount of his money. And just look at him. The guy's literally a clown in terms of the way he conducts himself. But this is just an exact and perfect view into he is the ideology of the mainstream of the Republican senator. Not necessarily of the Republican Party, but in terms of what the mean Republican senator believes, that's it right there. They actually think this stuff. They're just too afraid to say it out loud.
Decades of, of infrastructure and research and apparatus just waiting. I mean, that's why the one thing Trump gets accomplished when he's in office is his tax reform that ultimately cuts taxes for the rich, because that's what their entire movement is set up economically to ultimately sort of churn out. I just found this news article. This is kind of interesting. According to Playbook, Trump is trying to recruit Rick Scott to be majority leader. Which also shows you, like, I don't know if this is like actually going to happen or a real thing, but he hates Mitch McConnell so much. Just based on stop the steal. Like, that's the only thing that matters. So if ever you wanted to even for a split second delude yourself to that there was some other policy platform involved, I think this should dissuade you from that view.
That's a great point.
All right, guys, thanks for watching. We'll have more for you later.
Hey guys, we're going to be totally upfront with you. This is the most perilous time that we have ever operated in.
It is so difficult just to try to sort through the news, but even more importantly, to bring you accurate information as this wave of lockdown and censorship spreads across the nation.
Yeah, look, if you can become a premium subscriber today at breakingpoints.com, you're going to help us build out a vibrant, independent media ecosystem which is free of mainstream pressure. We can't tell you how important that is at a time like this.
Yep, that's right. Go to breakingpoints.com to subscribe. We love you guys and we appreciate you so much.